Kia ora everybody and welcome to the Good Day Matrix. I am incredibly proud and honoured to be sitting here today with Ranjna Patel. She is the director and founder of Tāmaki Health. She's the founder of Gandhi Nivas. She has an ONZM from the Queen. She has a QSM. She was the 2001 Innovator of the Year. She is the Westpac Women of Influence Community Hero, and she was a finalist for the New Zealander of the Year. I couldn't be more honoured if I tried to be sitting alongside this woman today. So thank you so much for your time. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you for having me, and my pleasure.
Thank you. So today, like we were talking about earlier, we are focusing on 5 pillars of wellness, and I think they all really tie in really well with what you're doing and all the mountain of things that you do in your life. But so body, mind, identity, community and environment are where we really focus, and we believe it's not just body and it's not just mind, and we need to get all of that holistic view and approach going to wellness so that we can really see New Zealand and Aotearoa thrive in their everyday lives. So yeah, so we'll start with body. It's a great place to start. So are there any like activities or daily rituals or routines that you do for your body?
No. I dream of doing lots of things.
Yeah.
And lockdown was the only time where I could actually do something for myself, for my body, going on walks, doing exercise on a daily basis. But I think that part we all just leave until we have time, and we don't make the time. And so I think what I enjoyed most about lockdown was the ability to go for a walk, because I was not zoomed anywhere, or I wasn't going to meetings. One meeting takes up a whole day. So just having that time of not doing something, which I think, you know, a lot of people say is retirement, but what I found is actually you're doing a lot more when you're retired.
Yeah, agree, and particularly with grandbabies and etc. in your life, it doesn't stop you. One thing stops, the next thing starts. Oh, that's so cool. We talk about prioritizing our bodies, you know, like and how we prioritize things, but it's actually not as easy as people think, you know, like, and you've just said it, like we don't put the time into doing that. But sometimes when you're running from pillar to post, just navigating daily life, it is really easy for the things we know will work for ourselves to fall off the list, and because we're taking care of everything else and everyone else around us. It's sort of our innate female ability, I guess.
Nurturing.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, I'm 36 now, and I've just started to really be like, right, how do I fit in? And I ride my bike. It's just an exercycle at home, but I read a book, because I can't just do one thing. So I ride my bike and I read a book, but it has to be like so I'm reading Cassie Romer at the moment. She was on The Apprentice New Zealand this year, about marketing, but it has to be something where I'm learning and my brain's engaged and my body's moving. Then I'm happy that I've made time to take the half an hour, but it's not easy.
and that is funny. We don't now just do one thing at a time. I know when I was growing up, you'd do knitting, and that was something you concentrated on. And now you watch TV, but you've got something in your hand, whether it's playing Candy Crush or, playing Sudoku. You're doing something. You just feel you can't do one thing at a time. And is that because our brain is now wired that if you just watch TV, you feel you're not doing something?
Yeah, it almost does become a guilt thing, eh? But I need to be busy.
I need to, do something. And playing Candy Crush isn't being busy.
No.
But you're just doing 2 different things.
So true. And it's a challenge on our mindset too, which is a great segue into mind. How good. I am devastated. I don't think I could say it any other way. When I did research about you, obviously, and have heard your stories about the racism that you and your whānau have had over your time, and honestly, I just get devastated at the idea of it, to be honest. And when we were at the New Zealand Hall of Fame a month ago now, when Kitty Nathan spoke of her journey, and I was thinking, that's only 20 years ago. That's like, I'm 36, like that's in my time that those things are happening, and it just utterly blows my mind. So I just wanted to kind of open that floor up around mindset, because you've stood up and you've said it's not okay, and you've had those conversations, and over to you to talk about what were the drivers to do that, or was there a turning point where you were like, no, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore? How have you?
I think it's easy to say you want to do something, but when you have a day job and you're dependent on the outside perception of what you're doing, you mind your P's and Q's. And so, acknowledging it. My granddaughter at 17 has acknowledged it. Recently she gave a speech at her school, and it was like the last word that all senior prefects do, and she did it, and she picked up on lots of gems of our stories and put it all together, and it was phenomenal. And I says, I've just got the courage now at 60 plus to have a voice. And you were blown away at 36 that this happens, and Kerry will tell you it's still happening now. And so nothing's really changed. And so I called it out last year when they talked about future of Auckland, and looked at the people sitting in the room to say, you're not born a racist. So which generation in this room is propagating it? Which generation is condoning it? And I think it really hit home on March 15th when my daughter came home really, really upset. And he's 46, she's 40, and said, that girl that said, you can't come to my birthday party because you don't wash your brown, is saying we are one. Which planet is she on? The anger that they both had. And I put it down to the fact that we tolerated it. And because we tolerated it, they thought they had to tolerate it.
Yeah, that's so true.
And so, you can't change it, so you have to tolerate it in order to survive.
Yeah. And it's that survival thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's survival.
It is.
It's job, and it's making sure you're safe because you're not safe because you're facing racism, but that you have a job and that you're not stirring the pot where they're going to go, she's too much trouble. Thank you very much, see you later. Can't afford to risk it.
And which generations, we're talking about schools, which generation, with my youth advisory council, if you're not shown as a bright star, it's like, don't take 2 sciences, it's too hard. They're already discouraging girls to take on any challenges because they see someone brown, they see someone you won't be able to cope. There is no leeway in our whole system to say that you're not prejudged by, what you look like. And I always say, I walk into a room and I'm already prejudged, fresh off the boat, and I now make a point of walking up in a sari. I'm a 3rd generation, but I do that so that, and people say, you've already prejudged me. Fresh off the boat, someone didn't tell her she's supposed to come in a suit. They've already prejudged me. I go to India and I open my mouth and think, oh, she's a whānau. So where is it, being a 3rd generation, do I belong?
And there's no simple answer, is
there?
No
simple answer.
Like I talk about, like with my dad, he's a really open, he's 78. I should get that right. 78, 79, sorry Stanley. And he's so open-minded. I respect the hell out of where he sits, because there are a lot of people his age who aren't and have had things that are normal, and it could just be a passing comment about, and they don't even think about it. And it's not even just down to racism, it's the size of people, things like that, and they think it's an acceptable thing just to make a passing comment about something that, and so we've had lots of chats about that. I'm like, how have you got all being lesbian or gay? And a friend of mine came out gay, and he'd known her and her dad since long before we were born. They worked together, and he rang me and was like, have you called her yet? And I was like, why? Because I just said, it's on Facebook, she's got a girlfriend, etc., etc. And he was like, you need to call her. I was like, I don't understand why I'd need to call her, Dad. And he was like, because she needs to know you still love her. And I was like, she'd know that. But it's that sort of stuff that he is aware of, but he still has those silly passing comments, which I'll call him on. He'll go, yeah, no, I know, sorry. But it's intergenerational. But how do you stop that flow? And then how, from your perspective, I mean, that's clearly you've shown that strength though, because your 17-year-old granddaughter is standing up.
Yeah.
You know? So
but it missed a generation.
yeah. That's that tide changing. But even in the 60s, I was watching a movie the other day, and they thought they'd made such great gains, and they had in black civil rights in America. But we're 60 years later now.
Yeah.
How are we still...
Yeah, it's still going on about Black Lives Matters.
Yeah.
And more so here, because it's not quite black, you know. It's ironical when you think about it, and when you listen to people, especially in South Auckland, you know, saying that in the 70s, going back to the 40s and 50s and 60s, the Asians were picked on.
Yeah.
The Chinese migrants, the Indian migrants. Then you had the Pacific big flow in the 60s, 70s and 80s that New Zealand needed, and they were here.
Yeah.
And they were picked on. And now it's back to the Asians again.
Yeah.
That we're forgiving, you know, we did the treaty settlement, we did the Pacific, you know, a Chinese apology, then the Pacific apology, but the same treatment is now being given to the migrant population. You know, I was at a conference in Oamaru on family harm, and Mark Sullivan said that, you know, by 2050, the Pacific and the Asian community is what's going to be paying your superannuation. So if you don't encourage them to be educated, and if you do not encourage them to survive properly, there's going to be no one paying for your superannuation.
Yeah. More people need to hear that message. You know, like not from a monetary point of view, but I don't know what messages need to be said to be
Hope.
hammering home that home is for anybody. Everybody belongs here. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Let us solve this problem, right? It pains me. I think that's one of my strengths in life, I guess, is I've never seen someone as a colour or a race. They're just my friend, or they're just someone I work with, and I appreciate where they come from. I've worked with Fijian Indians and go around for Diwali with their whānau, and some of my best friends are Māori and Pacific, and but I don't see that. I appreciate who they are, but I don't go, how many friends do I have that are, you know,
Not white.
Everybody just,
People are people.
Yeah, people are people, and I'm grateful that they include me in the different things that make them who they are. You know, going to Diwali and going to kapa haka performances when their children are performing, things like that. It's a really important part. Yeah. So around identity, knowing who you are, obviously, it's a great segue. We're doing great today. It's
At least you're sticking to your script.
We've got our flow. We've got our flow. It's so important to know who you are, and particularly, you know, even when you're getting all of these challenges or feeling as though you can't, because one of my things is bring your whole self. I say that to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, be you. If you can't be you, you're in the wrong space, and how do you navigate that space? But knowing who you are and connecting to your heritage and your identity and where your whānau have come from. You know, my family, my dad's side are from Wales, so I was so intrigued, like what made them get on a boat? What made them come here? What made them end up in the Taumarunui sort of, you know, the Otorohanga region? Why did we end up there? And how did Pop meet Nan? And, you know, like all these different things. But tell us about your whānau's journey.
So my grandfather in the 1920s came from Fiji. He was from India, went to Fiji with banana plantation licenses, and then came to New Zealand when that finished. And so my dad was born there, and he shipped my grandmother and dad off to India, and he came out here. And on that boat there were 20 young Indian men. Half were Punjabi, North Indian, and half were from a northwestern state of Gujarat. And so they landed here, and they dispersed all around New Zealand. I think about a third of them actually married local girls, Maori mostly. So you get a lot of the whānau up north and the Waikato that have got Indian names, you know, that have gone through. And they've actually integrated more into the Maori culture than they did retaining their Indian culture, which seemed really odd. But, you know, the woman they married obviously must have been quite influential and supportive. Or was it the fact that they were there just to survive and left all the nurturing to the mum to do back in those days? So it'd be interesting to know that, what actually and why that happened. Because usually a different culture is much stronger, but perhaps they're very aligned cultures, and that's why it didn't make a difference. And so my grandfather, when my dad and my uncle, we were born in a fruit shop in Herne Bay with my uncle and dad and 7 siblings. They all grew up together, and it didn't, in those days we went to the same school. My uncle and my dad went to Bayfield Primary, we were there. One of my siblings' child went there, so it's quite interesting. But you know, we were brought up in a fruit shop where you did what needed to be done. And in those days, you know, and I talk about it, what was my business skills? Working in the fruit shop after school. And in those days it was working in pounds and ounces, and pounds, shillings and pence. And you put it on a scale and you calculated it. And in those days, nobody touched produce, only the shopkeepers. You'd say, I want a pound of peaches, and they put it in the bag. And so you learnt, if you gave that lady a bruised peach, she'll complain next time. And so, or she'll bring it back. And so you knew that importance is, if you ask, what you ask for is what you get. I was talking to an audience that was my age, and so they knew the difference between a Golden Delicious apple and a Granny Smith apple. I use that thing in a younger audience, and they just but if someone wants a, you know, Golden Delicious, you don't give them a Granny Smith, one sweet, one sour. That you must realise what the customer wants, I think is so important, which was instilled in us. Those were the days when it was 5.5 days, you know, shops were open. And so Friday night was usually spent either bottling the stone fruits in, you know, summer season, so that could be sold the next day because it was going to go off over the weekend. If we had peas, shelling all the peas, because shelled peas would sell, but if they were going slightly yellow, no one would buy them. So you learnt how you adapt to what the customer wants or what the customer will buy. So when my husband, I was a little bit of a wayward child, as my older sister was very compliant. I wanted to go out, so my parents thought this is not going to end good. So they did their homework, so sent me off to India.
Oh wow!
So at 18, they said, you know, you can meet someone. So I left here on the 27th, met my husband on the 30th of November, and married him on the 8th of December.
Wow.
48 years ago.
Wow. What was that like?
I don't know. At 18, I think everything's possible. You don't, if it's normalised, you don't, you know, it's like you just think it's normal. And I liken it quite often to, you know, when we're talking about doing things, that if a great example would be when I sat on the NACU board, the National Advisory Council on Employment of Women, we did a survey with 5 girls from Porirua College and 5 girls from St Cuthbert's, and one was a scholarship student, and asked the girls, you know, what does your future look like? And the girl from Porirua says, I want to be the first in my whānau that isn't pregnant by the time she leaves school. The Tongan girl that had a scholarship at St Kentigern's, I'm going to be the next Prime Minister. First a lawyer, then I'm going to be the next Prime Minister. So changing the environment you are in, you know, it normalises it for you. And so, you know, I think it's normal that this is what Indian girls did. And all my peers here, there's 10 of us that still meet for dinner, you know, every couple of months. And all going through different things together, But all of us had arranged marriages like that.
Wow. Wow. I can't imagine it, but it's obviously that homework that they do. They know you.
It's a social background, education background. You know, most families will look at education as the main thing. Doesn't matter if you're from a poor background, but you will survive if you've got a good education, a good grounding. Education gives you the knowledge, but it also gives you the discipline of having a goal, having a time frame in which to do it, and learning how to do it. And if there's weaknesses along the way, you ask for help in order to get your result. So, you know, being educated sets you up in a different way, not just the degree that you get from someone that left school at 7th form.
But, and that's the thing too, though. People think if they do a degree like I've done teaching and sport, and I'm not in either of those paths anymore, you know, but so often people think they get stuck there too, like, oh, but I'm only this. The transferable skills you have to take you away from that. But so what made you, so you obviously, did you get married in India?
Yes, got married in India. And then when he came out here, he wanted to be a specialist. He was the top of his class. And a very wise specialist that took him under his wing said, you know, you can't be a specialist in New Zealand. That's in the early 70s. He says, New Zealand's not ready for a coloured specialist with an accent. None of your peers will ever refer any patients to you. So go and work in a community in primary care that looks like you and sounds like you. So that in those days it was Ponsonby or Otara. I was brought up in Herne Bay, and my husband, it just so happened that a practice in Otara, and we're moving to Otara on the corner house there, Preston Road and Ormiston Road. We moved there, and those were the days of the dawn raids, so you just saw those pictures in the paper all the time, and the days of the machete attacks in the Otara shopping centre. And so we'd bought this business and had to borrow even the legal fees. And so, you know, the model was 9 to 12 and 3 to 5. And my husband Gandhi says, you know, this isn't going to pay our mortgage. And so he says, you know, it's not what the community needs. They have to put bread on the table. So taking a couple of hours off work is not going to work. If a mum, and in those days a phone in a car were not necessarily everybody had. And so it was like, it's raining today, I can't take my 5 children up to the doctors. So the perception became, Pacific and Mary didn't care for their health, but that's mainstream, that's what Wellington. And he says we just need to open before school, after school, so before dad goes off to work, mum can bring the kid into, or you know, in the evening. And our peers didn't like it because we were making general practice too accessible. Now, you know, Business 101, if you're giving Granny Smith and Golden Delicious, you know, give what the patient needs, then they will, you know, it's a different mindset. And we grew and grew, and then it was like, this Indian couple must be dodgy because, you know, general practice doesn't grow that way. And so we were audited. And nothing came of it. But that behaviour in us of accepting that this is the norm is what my children learned. And that's, you know, it manifests later on for them. So until we as adults, or we as the people that are setting the example, don't change our behaviour, you know, it's not going to flow through to the children. And, you know, we were talking about teachers. They've got to be the biggest change behaviours. They don't look a room full of kids and say, oh, you better just stick to this, or let's look at apprentices for you. And oh yeah, you look as though, you know, you will succeed. Stop labelling people. People have different ways of learning things.
So true.
What education did I get? I got it from the fruit shop. So you don't undervalue or oversell what you think is right and what you think is wrong.
I always laugh. I'm sure when I was at primary school, all of the parents at my primary school would have thought I was going to be the early teen pregnancy, the didn't do much with my life kind of kid, because my dad was a truck driver, rubbish truck driver. My mum just worked 9 to 3 as a carer in people's homes, and I was a swearer because I was a truck driver's daughter. So, you know, but I was at a Catholic school, so they were all at church on a Sunday, and my family weren't. And it was a really interesting space to be in. All the school awards, like I was the one who would work with all the junior school. Every lunchtime I'd be with them doing sports activities, running around, checking on, like that was, and I never ever got any of those altruism awards about being part of our school's community ever. Whereas these girls who never did anything in the community constantly got the awards and stuff. So no, I was no scholar. I 100% put my hand up. I was average, but I was a good kid. I was never disrespectful. To teachers, I listened. I was a talker, you know. But
I got labelled a chatterbox.
Every report I read it a while ago with my son, and I was like, yeah, you can kind of see where Mum was going. Like this is. But it was. I was. If you looked at me in the path and the role models I had, if they looked at it that way, my parents didn't have degrees and they, you know, had just been working since they were 15 years old. That was my path. And so I've been really grateful almost to sit back and go, well, I didn't do any of the things that I assume even my principal thought I would have done. Because, I mean, on my last day of school, she heard me swearing. A boy had hurt me quite badly, and so I yelled because it really hurt, and I just got caught, unfortunately. And so I had to sit in front of the principal's office all day on my last day of primary school, so year 8 now, so we were right through to before we went to high school. And I just remember sitting there so embarrassed because I don't like getting in trouble. Like I wasn't seeking it out, whereas other people would sit there like, who cares?
Yeah.
But she made me tell every single person that I had been really naughty, and I just had the script that I had to say to everybody, why are you sitting here, Darren? You know. So, but the mana now that I know what, like, I'm not Māori, I really wish I was. Like, I feel like I've got such passion for identity and stuff sitting inside of me, and appreciation, but even for a white kid sitting there, the mana that they took away that day, and right through my schooling, because I didn't fit the mold of a Catholic kid at the school who went, you know, who did these different things. And so I often think of that as well in these different communities as well with these guys, and how people see different people. Yes, I have white skin. I've not had the same things, but it's the same kind of assumptions people make. Yeah. And it wasn't until my 7th form year, so year 13, where a teacher believed in me, I got my first ever academic award for diligence in drama. And I was just beyond rapt, and it was like the turning point of my life. And then I went and studied sport, and I was top 3 through Wintec, and I did well in my teaching. And then my mum and dad were like, is this the same kid? Because everyone had kind of written me off like, do you not just want to go get a job? Maybe study's not for you. Yeah.
See, and it did all the stories of my youth advisory counsellors, one teacher that makes it or breaks it.
Yeah, and it was the same for Kitty, that Mrs. Brown that she spoke about. As soon as she said her name, I was like, I'll never forget that name, because those are the teachers you want to find now and go, what made you do that?
Yeah, mine was Mr. Webster.
Mr. Webster. I love that. I had a Mrs. Weber when I was a kid, like a little kid, and she was beautiful. She came to the hospital and had my tonsils out. Mrs. Weber, Jan Weber, I remember you. It's funny what you remember, eh?
Yeah.
So you are by far one of the, well, we're all on a mission, but you're a woman on a mission, and you're on a lot of missions to do a lot of good around New Zealand, which I'm just in awe of. But with your background with the shop, would you say that fruit shop is the grounding for you connecting to these different communities and understanding and getting in there, or are there other things that have influenced you to become part of so many communities to make a difference?
I think when we started our practice in 77, we realised I don't think, you know, we were poor, but we never felt poor. There was always food on the table. Yes, we never had frozen foods, we never had tin foods because they were too expensive. We had a fruit shop. So you learnt. So we never felt poor growing up. None of us ever felt that of wanting anything, because you had a good family structure. When we came to Otara, you realise that so many people just didn't have that hope, just couldn't survive. And so you start talking to them, And you think, oh, that's easy enough to do. Why aren't they doing it?
Yeah.
But to you, what's easy enough to do and what's easy enough to do when you have nothing is very, very different. And so, you know, you start talking, and once you start talking and you listen, I think that's the biggest thing, is if you don't know anything, you listen a lot more.
Yeah.
And if you feel inadequate, you listen a lot more.
Yeah.
And you pick up the gems. And I think everything at the moment, I sit on boards of NGOs, which, you know, and I only stay where I feel I can make a difference.
Yeah.
My voice is heard. Sometimes you're on these boards and you say things and people just look at you blankly saying, what planet are you on? And so I've been on several advisory boards when they tried to do reforms, and it would be all academics, and it would be the knowledgeable people, the Wellington people, and you say things and there's just no comprehension. And so, you know, you're dismissed very quickly. And you know it, because you just see the blank face. You say something, you know, and you get a blank face. And you know you're not going to make a difference, so you walk away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just finished recently on a senior women's group. And the chair says to me, you know, I did go blank several times, but on my way home, the whole meeting, all I would remember is what you said.
Wow.
So, you know, was it right? Was it wrong? But the fact that it was different and you heard something that was out of the normal,
Yeah.
you heard it and you regurgitated it and you analysed it
Yeah.
to say, okay, where is she actually coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. Challenging norms and perspectives.
And, you know, I say that's more the diversity of thought is needed
Yeah.
at the board table more than diversity.
Yeah.
That if you don't listen to that diversity of thought there, and recognising that it is foreign to mainstream New Zealand, and most of the boards you sit on, it's very foreign.
Yeah.
That you're either dismissed very quickly, and you either have a thick skin to sit in there to say, well, I want to make a difference here,
Yeah.
or you walk away. And I think I've got to that stage is that I persevere a bit more.
Yeah.
And that's how Gandhi Nivas came about, that in, you know, the year 2014, a senior police officer from Wellington presented data to the advisory board at Counties Manukau and said 4 out of 14 women killed an Indian last year. So there's a problem in your community. You go, no, not in my community. Same reaction most people have, because you just don't. If you're not in that space, you just don't comprehend it.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and said, data doesn't lie. Okay, so I went to MIT trying to understand, well, what is it? What causes it? Why is it? And then you get even more astounding, you know, 1 in 3 women is abused, 1 in 6 boys are abused. You know, every 4 minutes police are called to a family harm incident, and they believe only 20% of women pick up the phone. So in less than a minute, something in someone's home in New Zealand, something is happening. You know, it's terrible. I've got 6 granddaughters.
Yeah.
I didn't like the odds. And so the police said, okay, what do we do? They got all the providers together. And when you're not involved with something and you've got a whole group of people from all over the place, from people working with men, working with boys, SIFs, Women's Refuge, Friendship House, anger management, all in a room talking, saying, well, yeah, police are turning up. And they did something really brilliant in 2010 by leaving the woman in the home with the children and removing the man. But they removed him, but where would he go?
Yeah.
And what would he do? So next time she rings, it's going to get a lot worse,
Yeah.
because she rang the police.
Yeah.
And so they said, you know, if we could have bricks and mortar and provide free anger management, free counselling and a bed, so that when police remove them, that the man just doesn't go into the car with another bottle of alcohol, because he's not going to go to family. You know, the silly woman rung, and who is she to ring to kick me out of my
Yeah.
house? And then the family just make it worse. And so what's the option? And they said if you could just provide a house an immediate time for them to analyse. And you know, 2 things I put into is that when we're having a baby, if someone ever says to us in the delivery suite, when you're having your second one, you say, no way am I having, the pain is raw. When you have a heart attack, that first 24 hours you remember that pain, then you forget. So, you know, we've got staff that as soon, if you're in hospital with a heart attack and you come home, they will ring saying, you know, you're a smoker, that 5% extra chance if you keep smoking to have another heart attack. Remembering when the sore point is. So when she's actually rung the police and police have brought him there, the fact that, you know, to hear what they have to say and have registered and qualified people, because it's very important, you get one chance sometimes to have that conversation. And if it's not right, that's what's imprinted in their mind. So to have the right, you know, conversation. And to me, and to most people, you'll say, men don't talk. And the counsellors will say, we can't stop them talking. Because it's the first time in their life someone hasn't gone, you did this, you did that, you're the scum of the earth, you hit her. It's letting them talk of why. And you know, and then what they said is that, yes, we can give him all the tools you want, but if we don't look at the bigger picture, you're not going to fix anything, because you're giving him tools and putting him back in the same environment. So, you know, our program is very different, and because I didn't get government funding, it was all from the community. I don't have this competency. I recognise the problem, but I listen to what people that are entrenched in that problem, that work on it a day-to-day basis, what they felt the solutions were. And to them, police knew what they wanted, counselling service knew what they wanted, but somehow they just couldn't get it together. And I think I have that ability of getting the shit done. You know, where everyone else says that it's just not, it can't do it.
There are threads you can pull together to
easily. And so I just had to go to the Indian business community and say, we've got a problem in our community. I need to do a fundraiser. I'm holding a fundraiser in Papatoe at a restaurant. You're going to be paying $100. You're going to pay $500 to come to it. You know, because I supported you, you're going to support me. And so we got the first house started. Everybody, as soon as they heard saying, I've got 2 beds, I've got a dressing table, I've got a fridge, I've got this, I've got that. And the whole first house was furbished with community. So, you know, I think being able to pull things together and having that voice is what is, I suppose it's the enabler.
It's the testament to you, though, because it's not just that you're listening, it's that you have connected to so many that they have faith and trust that when you listen and you know there's a solution, that you've done your work, and it's not sort of pie in the sky going, I think this could work. You know, you've really
It is pie in the sky. It was the first of the. It was like, why would you want to work? I had so much flack and so much resistance. Why do you want to work with the scum of the earth? They should just go to jail. And you say, no, but 92% of the women take the men back. Even when they go to women's refuge. And so if we don't give the men the skills to recognise what they did was wrong and give them tools that next time she drives you crazy again, what to do, you're not going to make a difference.
So true.
Because it's a double-edged sword. That, you know, the woman will go to women's refuge, and then it'll be, well, what about tomorrow? I'm safe today. What about the children? How am I going to feed them? How am I going to send them to school? That our system doesn't provide a all-encompassed way. You know, people that come to Gandhi Nivas, the program actually is work with the men, go to the woman's home, because we know only 20% call to say, was this the last straw on the camel's back, or was this the first time that you had the courage, you know, you rung. And then remove them if necessary, give them the tools. And then couples counselling, saying, he said, she said, won't work here now, and give them tools. And then the children, because with, you know, David Kadaya, our psychiatrist, he made it quite clear it's going to take 3 generations to get that out. If a child sees mum being hit and dad hitting mum and mum not saying anything, the girl thinks, well, it's normal.
Yeah.
And the boy thinks it's normal. Mum didn't say anything. So to get that out, that it's just not okay, is our biggest challenge.
Yeah. I have a friend who was in a really abusive relationship, and I remember talking to her one day, and she goes, you just take what you can get sometimes. It's like, no. How do I shift that for you? And she was saying how lovely my husband is. She said, you know, you struck it really lucky, Des, but it's because you deserve to find someone really lovely. I was like, no, we all deserve to feel safe and be loved. You don't take what you can get, and that still sits with me to this day of how you can.
But as women, we're nurturers.
Yeah.
And what about tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, now the kids are old, self-sufficient. Now I can walk away.
Get them through.
And so, you know, it's a hard space to be in. But to me, the biggest successes we've had probably now, you know, we work with families, like one family in Papakura at the moment, 19 members. It's the young man that came in, but everybody else around him influences what's happening.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's 5 counsellors working with one family. And, you know, drug and alcohol is one of the main causes, poverty.
Do you have government funding and help now?
Now we do.
3?
But it's not going to start till next year. That's another story. I won't go there. But no, ACC was my first partner. Okay. And, you know, I always say to everyone, be kind to everybody.
Yeah.
You just don't know who's your friend tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so my nurse leader here, who husband worked at ACC, heard about the program and absolutely got it. So he brought his manager from Auckland, who got it, who then, when her manager from Wellington and prevention management came, he came to the house, and he happened to be an ex-cop that had worked in Counties Manukau and got it. He said, in my day, what we used to do when we turn up to a family harm incident in South Auckland is take the man out to Whitford, take his shoes off, say walk home and think about what you did, because that was the only option we had. Because, you know, he would come.
What trouble he gets up to, oh dear.
So, you know, it's a very small world. So ACC was my first partner, 2 years into it. But, you know, I'm so fortunate. I had a counselling service that put up their hand. You know, when police got everybody together, we had a group of 20. Then it went down to 12 because there was no money on the table.
Yeah.
And this one counselling service turned around and says, no, we want to work in this space because it's so important. That for, you know, nearly 2 years, they just worked on a small lotteries grant, a small grant from Total Health Care, and my fundraisers. And they provided 24/7. So the point of difference is 24/7, because most incidents happen on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, and most services are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah. Which again,
and so completely mismatch from my first day at the clinic, mismatch of service.
Yeah. Not understanding the community or thinking, because it's a hard space to be in, like you said. It's a really hard space, so they probably think staff won't want to do, you know, weekends and be on call and do these different things, so they try and make it a nice
and
easy
the cost of having 24/7 staff and you know, doing them, it's just done phenomenal. You know, I run 24/7 24-hour clinics, and I know it's a real hassle. So it is run a 24/7 is a real big issue, but that's what's needed. And we're going to have to adapt the model where we go to rural areas, because that's not going to be cost effective, but how do we do it? Because the rural areas are the most high needs. Women have nowhere to go. No services are out there. So that's, you know, even a bigger challenge that we face, you know, the abuse, I think, in the rural community is probably a lot more isolation. And as you know, we label it a brown problem, but as Jackie Clark would say, you know, it's very much a white middle class problem,
Very much.
well hidden there, whereas in the lower socioeconomic areas we can't hide it as much.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such an embarrassment thing, isn't it, as well? Like, it shouldn't be, but you feel shame, like, what did I do wrong? Or and fear of, again, your children and the safety of, and sometimes it is also a money thing.
The money.
If I walk away, how am I going to put food on the table for my children? Where are we going to stay?
And more so once you get used to a lifestyle as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just the low socio-demographics, it's a higher one. People will believe him more than they believe me.
Yeah.
And the, you know, well-heeled people.
Yeah. Environment plays a part in everything we've talked about today, but there's no tips, it's not the right thing, but with this intergenerational, it is that 3 generation, isn't it? How could you, in an environment, because we talk about our physical environment, we talk about sustainable environments, and we talk about, you know, outdoors and indoors and workplace and home, but in an environment you can create around yourself is just as important. So, you know, if you're putting kindness out, it means your team, if you're working with a team, know that you're approachable, or if you're empathetic, that you'll try and meet them where they are. If you put out humour, they're going to know that they can come to you with a bit of a joke, or if you're quite serious, you know, those different things. Or if you've got a vibe that's quite shut off and you don't show vulnerability, then they're not going to show it back. So in your experience and over your time, do you have any tips or stories about that intergenerational environment creation that people could start to think about what they're putting out around their children or around their grandchildren that could start to help those environments change?
I think, you know, the biggest tip you can have is you don't tell people your actions. What you do is what people will see. You know, even in my health clinics, back in the early 80s, you know, I had one mum come to me to say, my daughter's going off the rails, do you think you can give her a job? And you know, that girl's still with me now.
Wow.
You know, and I've recognised she gets bored every 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And so how do I keep changing her job?
Yeah.
And so she's gone off, had 3 babies, but still with me. You know, and each of them, you know, there's probably 5 or 6 like that is it nepotism? But in those days, you made a big difference in that household.
Yeah.
She was the first one to earn money, you know, and then her sister came along. And I've got my call centre downstairs, you know, the girl, she started with me at 18. And she was a Bolshie kid, but, you know, very smart, and I recognised that. And then when her sister needed a job, she had an attitude, and she was like, Vicky told me to come here, so I'm here. I said, well, you're not getting the job then. And then the second time, you know, she applied again. I said, have you changed your attitude? And I still got there. I says, Vicky, I can't see a change. And then the third time, no, I want the job. I says, okay, I'm not giving you the job. I am giving your sister the responsibility for you to do it properly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I learned quickly, if she was accountable to me, it wouldn't mean anything, but her sister was pushing her to say, get the job.
Yeah.
And so you're accountable for her. Any mistakes you make, she has to fix. You know, and she turned out to be amazing.
That's fantastic.
And you see, each of these staffs will come to me, say, did you know that this is happening and it's not right? It's a different relationship. That you build. So, but they know the minute I walk into a clinic and there's rubbish on the ground, or if there's a mess, I'll clean it up.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the newer staff, that's not in my job description. Yeah. Hang on, you're in a medical clinic. If someone's sick, you're not going to leave it there for the cleaner to do. You've got to clean it up.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's not in my job description. So mindsets are very different.
Yeah.
And so I think setting by example is so important.
Yeah.
You don't tell people, don't be a racist.
Yeah.
But you show that you show compassion and you show empathy when it's needed. I always, when I'm speaking, I always have this mantra: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's so true.
Because, you know, you could be the most knowledgeable person, but if you're really rude, no one's going to listen to you, or you're not going to communicate in any way,
Yeah.
or you're not going to get your point across. You're not going to get change behaviour
Yeah. It's that
unless you
purpose,
try
eh?
to listen.
Mm.
And that's the same with Gandhi Nivas. The counsellors are listening, and it's the first time the men have been heard. And, you know, that's the only reason why you get 60% of men have not reoffended again, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I still can't get it across the line ministry level. Got it a little bit, but the fact, you know, and I question it. Is it the name? Is it the face?
Mm.
You know, do I need to put a white man up there to lead this organisation in order to move it? Do I need to put a white woman up there? I don't know.
Well, I pray that's not the answer.
I don't know. Because internationally, it's unheard of having 60% success rate. And to me, the big, you know, there's 3-4 bigger milestones. 48 of the men over the period of 5 years, 5 years prior and 5 years after, have gone through 15 courses set by government, by courts, by corrections, and after Gandhi Nivas have not reoffended again. And that's phenomenal.
Mm.
You know, so, and, you know, also up to 200 men have called to say, she's driving me crazy again, can I come in? That they've recognised. Or the mother-in-law's due to visit next week, can I come and stay a couple of days? And asking for help.
That's what we were talking about earlier, that asking for help.
Is very hard for everybody.
Yeah.
And for some men it's like, can I take you for a coffee, to the counsellors?
Yeah.
Oh, the gardens need doing. Is there any handyman jobs around?
Mm.
And it's like asking for help without. And when someone says, oh, can we go and do the gardens, the counsellors actually go out with them.
Yeah.
In the garden. And so the first home I got was in sort of not a very, it was in a sort of residential place. But the second home was a police community home, which had a big garden. And the third home in Papakura is down a right-of-way with a big garden. So, you know, counselling happens a lot in informal ways.
Yeah.
And the counselling service said to me, we don't have enough men counsellors, so it's got to be 50-50. And ignorant as I am in that space, I says, how is that going to work? Are men going to talk to women? And it's proven to me that, of course they are. And now we have more women counsellors. That when only on 2 occasions have I sat in on the perpetrators talking to politicians, and they praise the women counsellors. You know, saying she did this and I understood it. So, you know, what we think and what actually happens until you listen to them is very different. We're set in our ways. We've got this little box that everything should fit into, but life doesn't work like that.
Oh.
And so, you know, when the counselling service says, oh no, we need 50-50 because it's a softer side, and the, you know, men do open up.
Yeah.
And that you need to give them a safe environment where they can share. So, you know, it's an important part of it. It's not the answer to everything. You know, we only get 10% of the men that the police actually turn up to, because this is a early intervention program. Mental health is a big problem, and these the homes aren't equipped for the mental health issues. And we've found in the past 2 years, I've had so many broken windows, so many punched walls. You know, police don't have anywhere else to take them in, so they cross the boundary a little bit too, because we're saying if they're on medication, please bring everything with them. You know, let us know that they do have mental health issues, because this is early intervention and they're sharing rooms. You know, so it's important. But because there's no other facility like it in New Zealand, it's very limiting.
It's almost like band-aids on bullet holes sometimes, like
it is,
you know, and managing with what you've got. But
That's a good one, Band-Aid on Moonlit Hill.
Yeah, it's a country and western song. It's a lyric from a country and western song I picked up a couple of years ago. But it's true as well, like, you think you have a plan, whatever that plan is, whether that's your plan for work or your plan for your life or your plan with your kids that one day, and if it doesn't go to plan, that's where you need that resilience, you know, to cope with the challenge or the change or whatever that is. But that comes down to that cognitive stuff, which is from right when we're babies, you know, those first first 1,000 days. It's a really, really big
thing too.
Big. Yeah.
And, you know, as we're talking about mindfulness, you listen to the people that are doing it. You know, I thought, what did they want to do mindfulness in primary school for? How are you going to get 5 and 6 year olds to sit there, you know, concentrate on their breathing and this? But as I said to you, you know, proof in the pudding was when the school was in lockdown, and these kids are the ones told other kids, get under the table and let's practice our breathing. You know, so you don't underestimate the ability if we give tools at a very young age.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this has been one of my favourite chats of my whole life.
But it's off track.
No, this is not off track at all. So we have some quick fire questions for you to finish off today. 3 things that made you smile today.
The sun shined through my curtain window. My morning ritual of having the paper and breakfast, my quiet time in the morning, and reading a text from my granddaughter.
Nice. Favourite books?
I like the classics that we grew up in school with, Jane Eyre, and books like that. I recently read Rebel with a Cause, Ray Avery's story. And I like biographies of people, Michelle Obama's, you know, interesting people that are alive that have done it, so it doesn't seem archaic, that it's not doable. I think they can be the most inspirational. She's still alive and she's done that, and she's still doing it. So true. Those are
I'm of the same opinion. I like books that I can learn from or be inspired by. 3 favourite smells?
I love gardenias and jasmine, and food.
food and food. What makes you laugh?
What makes you laugh? I laugh at myself more than I laugh at other people. And I think, you know, when girls get together, we talk and do a lot of silly things with our barriers down. That makes me laugh.
Yeah, so true. First job we know was in the shop.
Fruit shop.
Apples. It's important to know the difference. Do you have go-to pick-me-up songs that just bring your soul alive?
Recently with Helen Reddy dying, you know, I Am Woman, it's come back. It used to be, you know, she used to have that powerful voice. And, you know, I love Lionel Richie. Loved his concert. You know, it was, I think the audience sung more than he did in his concert.
So true. My mum and I went to Paul McCartney in Auckland, one of the Beatles, and my goodness, the crowd was at the big outdoor stadium there, and it was so loud from the
Western
people
Springs.
singing. It was so good. Favourite concert, now that I say that. Favourite concert?
I think, you know, I went to the Beatles when they came back. And I think that is because of just, whether it's a favourite concert or not, it's just the fact of who they were. And the Bee Gees. So, and Lionel Richie, Rod Stewart.
Oh, beautiful. You've done all the good ones.
I went down to Dunedin for Elton John, so I didn't miss out on
Auckland. I did too. I was there.
Wow, so was I. In the wet,
cold,
freezing.
And you got saturated coming in, and you sat there, but just
with the whole
happy
night.
To be here. So happy to be there. 3 things you're grateful for today.
I think health is so important. Security, safety.
Big important things. Hobbies.
Hobbies. Do I have hobbies? I think I love just giving back. On Sundays we cook for 300, 400 people, and I'm not the leader there. I am the doer, the potato peeler, the dishwasher, the fryer, whatever. Nice space to be in. Is it a hobby? I think most of my hobbies seem to be in volunteer work.
Yeah.
So I get the most pleasure out of those.
That's the key, because this year I was like, I don't have any hobbies. Like, I love netball, but netball's more of a job because I manage netball and I'm always in the space of working. So I was like, what's my thing? So this year I've tried pottery, and I'm like, because I'm not creative, I was like, I'll just give it a nudge. Well, I'm not a potter.
No,
it was all right, but I couldn't sit there.
Yeah, mine just sort of flopped.
Yeah, no, it was I think the teacher even was like, oh, this is not for you. Like, I was giving it my all, but I realised I didn't have a hobby, but now I've realised actually my hobby is connecting with people. And it doesn't have to be knitting, or it doesn't have to be reading, or that the thing that gives my soul light is just connecting with people, and how that happens.
And it is like, it is a job at the temple, cooking and planning. And I'm the wedding planner at the moment. We've built a big complex next to the temple, and I'm sort of the wedding planner. And people have booked from a concrete shell with no idea what the complex is going to look like. And so, the responsibility of that, it is a job, and I'm saying, there's no systems. I need a system, but I haven't created it yet.
It'll come. And they'll be booking because they know what the temple feels like.
Yeah.
They'll know what that feels like to be part of it, and they'll know that's going to be just as
good,
as special.
And take my hat off. Weddings are so important to people.
Yeah.
And they've booked from concrete shells. Now it's in its final stages, looks amazing. But so I take my hat off to them.
Yeah. Well, that's a head tip to you guys too, though, of what you've created there. I guarantee I know the answer to this, but what does a lazy day look like for you? You don't have one, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're going to say.
If I did, sitting around, staying at home. I think I felt COVID, I accomplished just as much, but we did so many food parcels from the temple, we did this, but it's just by connecting with people. But we were at home, and to me, I feel that's, one day a week is my aim of just doing nothing at home. It will be doing lots of things, but just staying home,
at home,
not going out.
Yeah, that seems to be a common thread that's running through all of these chats, and it's even just being at home. I know I'll do lots, but there's no structure to how I'll do it. So then it's your time to.
If it's a day of being home and all I want to do is cook, that's fine. Whereas most people will think, oh, that's a job.
Yeah.
It's a chore I have to do.
Yeah.
Whereas you can sit and still in my PJs, and I can do this and I can do that.
It's space to, and if you enjoy cooking, because I enjoy cooking too, it's space to do it without rushing. Because there's nothing worse than at the end of the day and you're like, right, got to get dinner on the table for 3 children, and you're rushing. It's just enjoying it.
You're enjoying it.
Qualities you love about yourself.
I looked at that question and think, I don't know.
Yeah, true Kiwi. See, this is what everybody does. But I'll make you answer it.
I suppose my kids wouldn't agree with me, but listen, I feel I've succeeded because I've listened, and not having the knowledge, you're more open to listening. If it's out of your area of competency, it's like the temple. I'm not a religious person. I don't have the scriptural knowledge. My husband has it all. He reads for an hour in the morning. I get a 5-minute summary. So what do I like? I listen.
I'm sure there are many other qualities, but I'll take that. Sure, there's nothing else. I think
I love eating.
Yeah, there you go. I think one of the qualities you've already said about yourself is that you can laugh at yourself. I think that's a really important quality for all of us to have.
And I'm a great one for all my words getting around the wrong way. The kids laugh at me all the time. You've done it again.
Yeah. Or which child are you? Yeah. I've only got 3 and I'm always still like, Harry, Mac, Tessa, no. And I've got a dog,
I know you
Wally,
say
I'm like,
all
Wally,
3. I get that with everybody.
Oh, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. I just going away inspired and wondering how else I can try to support and do good things in lots of different places. But I just give you the biggest ups and the biggest respect because you've done amazing things, and you're not finished yet, and I can't wait to watch your journey and try and support however we can. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I think in a very privileged position, I can get shit done.
Yeah.
I think, I don't have to do anything, but the ability to put 1 + 1 and make it to 2 instead of going to -2, I think is so important. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.